We're now going to resume with our panel discussion on blockchain society, digital identity services and payments. I'm going to hand over to our moderator for this panel, ISOC's very own David Smith. Take it away, David.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our panel discussion entitled Blockchain Society, Digital Identity Services and Payments. My name is David Smith, and I'm your moderator for this very interesting and hopefully topical panel. The new government has put forward a vision for a smart Barbados, of which a key component is the Barbados Digital ID card. Every day we are seeing more and more services being introduced by the government and private sector that are designed to be digital by default. And finally, over the last few years, we've seen the introduction of digital payment solutions ranging from carifs to online banking to mobile money and mobile wallets. However, I've heard persons express views such as, I don't want any digital ID card, I don't want the government knowing anything about me, I don't trust the government to keep my data secure, and other such complaints. And these are valid concerns that force us to ask, what are the implications of these new digital modalities, and what are the ramifications for us as citizens? What are our benefits and risks? Who owns my digital identity? Is it owned by me? Is it owned by the government? What would Barbados look like if we were to fully implement digital identity services and payments? What potential do they have to impact Barbados' ease of doing business and its economy in general? And finally, do blockchain technologies have a role to play underpinning this new reality? And if so, to what degree? To that end, we have 4 panelists who are eminently qualified to discuss these issues. First and furthest to my left is Mr. Magnus Arm, who has been the head of department for the Electronic Identity Department within the Estonian Information System Authority. The Information Authority is responsible for the electronic portion of the ID card and the development of ecosystems around that. For those of you who might not know, Estonia was named, quote, the most advanced digital society in the world by Wired magazine. They have already successfully implemented a digital ID card through which most government and private sector services are accessible. Next to him, we have Mr. Roland Haggins, who is the CARICOM Director for Nuco Global, who have built the Aion.network blockchain platform. It's a framework to enable the transition from paper-based currencies to those based on distributed ledger and blockchain technologies. A leading cryptocurrency analyst with expertise in strategic management, business development, operations, technology innovation, and the global regulatory environment, he has worked with large financial institutions and Fortune 500 technology companies, spearheading projects in the areas of banking, investments, and technology. He has also used his knowledge of the financial system to develop, coordinate, and lecture banking and finance courses for the University of the West Indies. Next to him, we have Mr. Kevin Hope, who is currently employed as an economist at the Caribbean Development Bank, with responsibilities for economic surveillance and country assignments to Jamaica and Antigua and Barbuda. He has previously worked for the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank as an economist and debt management specialist. In that role, he provided economic policy advice and technical assistance to member governments of the Eastern Caribbean. He has written several policy papers on economic growth and productivity, debt sustainability, and other topics. He has over 14 years of postgraduate experience with policy interests in banking and finance, economic growth, public finance, and debt management. And last, but by no means least, and someone who I believe is familiar to almost everyone in this room, we have Mr. Gabriel Abed, who is a globally recognized authority on digital currencies and has led discussions and spoken on the subject of blockchain technology at the Caribbean Development Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank, the United Nations, the Commonwealth Secretariat, and multiple central bank forums on many other world stages. His expertise has been developed through the pairing of academic pursuits and an indefatigable entrepreneurial spirit, driven by a belief in the revolutionary potential of technology and decentralized distributed ledgers for global good. That belief and expertise eventually led to the founding of Bitt, which is a fintech purpose-driven company built around the twin pillars of global connection and financial inclusion with a firm focus on the Caribbean basin. Gabriel believes that Bitt offers solutions to address a range of issues which face the Caribbean, including de-risking, digital cash issuance, remittances, and payment gateways, while offering transformative potential to kickstart the region's economic resurgence through a smart digital economy. At this point, I would like to invite our panelists, probably starting with Mr. Abed, to just, spend 5 minutes telling us a few words about themselves and about, how they see their relevance and how they see the panel progressing.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I've been around blockchain for a minute or two. I was one of the first movers in this region, and over the years, I've seen the disruptive and beautiful potential of the technology. And the one thing that I think I can offer here on stage is outlining how we can move away from looking at blockchain as a commodity-based trading asset/currency system and looking at this thing as a network, a protocol that we build on top of. And it's not limited to one field or the other. It can be any sector, and they're all ripe for disruption with this technology. So my background is network security. I have a Bachelor of IT, graduated in Canada. I came back to Barbados in 2010 to bring this technology to the island. And at the time, I didn't really understand the full potential and what it could really do for a small island developing state, a region, or a global mass of people. So today, that bio you read is a little bit dated, still accurate somewhat, but fast forward a few years later, we've been able to apply the technology not in just central banking, but in the commercial banking world, in the mutual fund world, and in the investment world, all the way down to applying it in the machine learning scenario. So the field is quite ripe, and I hope to encourage a discussion today that leaves everyone in the room with the mindset of taking forward an entrepreneurial spirit and looking at how you can take this technology and build something amazing for our country, and then put yourself in the lead in a particular field.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hope.
Pleasant good afternoon. So at the Caribbean Development Bank, our interest is really always around a development perspective. So permit me to at least take you on a journey. So I wouldn't belabor you with what our development challenges are. I'm certain that we know about it in terms of high debt, inefficient government, and in some instances, I guess, corruption. The instances where we have very low growth, or decades, at least the last decade in some countries. And what we've been spending our time at the Caribbean Development Bank working on is articulating what we call a Caribbean blueprint. If you think of it around 4 quadrants, how could we seek to improve the macroeconomic environment, productivity and competitiveness, human development, and environmental preparedness? So, and the beneficiary being a sustainable household, so it's really you and I. And pervasive in all of these, in each of these quadrants, is technology. How could we use technology to solve a lot of these development challenges? Of interest, the earlier presentation on economic growth cited St. Kitts, right, as one of the leading countries in terms of ICT application, but that also came as a result of good policy, good leadership on one hand, and also collaboration, particularly with the Taiwanese government and others, to leverage what are some of their experiences in Asia. And if you look at the ICT ranking, St. Kitts and Nevis and Barbados, 34 and 35, in terms of access, use, and skills, are equivalent. So one would ask the question, what is inhibiting us here in Barbados to actually be the beacon in terms of technology and innovation? So, as I said, our interest really at the bank is how could we partner with different agencies, whether it be the private sector or other development partners like the IADB, OAS, and World Bank, to come up with approaches to address these development challenges. And we found, as we've been embarking in each of those quadrants, as I said, that there are technological solutions. Case in point, M-Pesa was mentioned as a response to poverty and inequality in Kenya. We've had, in this case, in our neck of the woods, Bitt, in response to banking and finance and trying to solve the cross-border payment system. we equally have a tech startup originating from Caribbean nationals in terms of Sonar that's actually working with CDMO, that's trying to assist in solving or assisting with the environmental response to environmental threats. So currently at the bank, we see our role, and just for your information, the bank provides loans, technical assistance, and different collaborative support to ensure that we can leverage knowledge, which I think is one of the oftentimes undercited product or service that we offer, to ensure that we could expose a wide stakeholder in terms of how we can get things done. And we are a firm believer that once we could change our mindset and have this new way of working, where we focus on implementation, which is something that has been lacking in many of the policies that we design, that we can actually transform Barbados and by extension the rest of the region. So we're currently involved in partnerships surrounding how do we solve the payment challenge. So we had an opportunity to sit in one of Barbados' working groups that address a pilot around this. We've been in collaborations with the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank also, for which Bitt has a memorandum of understanding and also trying to bring about a digital currency. And we are working with our central banks also as they're trying to embark on how can they actually use the whole blockchain and digital currencies as a medium of exchange. I'm particularly interested in hearing from our counterpart from Estonia, because we believe Estonia have a useful lesson that we can learn in terms of how their e-identity could possibly work in the Caribbean. And so just to close, I will say that our involvement is that we're here to be a convener to assist in partnerships, how we can bring counterparts like our colleagues from Estonia and elsewhere, and even other development institutions to truly leverage or scale. I can't remember the author, but there was a publication that's entitled, I think it is Small is Beautiful. Many times, so think of one unicorn in a country, and it was mentioned earlier, Bitt. So an idea that resulted in investment. So imagine if we could have the confidence and the mindset to really go about networking and using the networks. That's where the opportunity to scale exists. In us, being optimistic and open and not xenophobic in some instances, and truly collaborating to attract the type of potential, because we do have the talent pool in the region. Thank you.
Mr. Haggins.
Good afternoon. So my name is Roland Haggins, and I'm the CARICOM Director for NUCO Global. And we've developed Barbados' first blockchain protocol that was launched in April. And we have developers right here in Barbados working on the core kernel. We've also got developers in Shanghai, Toronto, Romania. So it's a very global kind of like effort to build this blockchain. And the real key to the Aion blockchain is that we're solving some of the issues that are existing in blockchains today in terms of scalability, for one, increasing the number of transactions per second, and also interoperability between blockchains. So this is going to give us the ability to transform international business, to connect different countries together through blockchains, and to be part of a wider network to solve many of the problems that we're facing in the region today and in the world. So the important point to understand is a blockchain is an open source protocol in many cases that applications can run on top of. So this gives entrepreneurs the ability to design applications that can run on this blockchain. So for example, a company like Bitt that develops applications could potentially use the Aion blockchain to launch their applications, whether it's some type of a digital money application or whatever it is, or even if a central bank wants to issue a digital currency, they can use the Aion blockchain to do this. So there's many features, including both public and private transactions, and now we go into the very nature of observing transactions. And as Gabriel said, we want to start looking at this at a protocol level. So what is a protocol? Well, we all use the internet and we understand what the internet protocol is, but we now have the blockchain, which people are describing as the next iteration of the internet, but a secure version of the internet. So that's what we're doing here in Barbados, and we're working closely with the University of the West Indies, because if you really consider it, there's been a lot of discussion today about how are we going to achieve the innovation that we need to see in Barbados. How are we going to become a nation of innovators? And I was very pleased to see the Director of Innovation here from the government of Barbados. Also, Mr. Charles Brown, who's the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Innovation and Smart Technologies. There's very strong support from this government, this administration. You can see that within the manifesto, where we're talking about ensuring that we do have this environment that's conducive to innovation. So here we would like to see lots of Barbadians start using the Aion blockchain, start developing applications. As I say, we're working closely with the university to ensure that the university has the right courses developed so that we are turning out blockchain engineers, so that when these students leave the University of the West Indies, they have jobs to come into. So currently, globally, there's a very high demand for blockchain engineers. And we've got some great talent here in Barbados. These guys are, on GitHub, they're putting commits, they're contributing to this blockchain, and we'd like to see more of this. So as the Prime Minister mentioned at the recent BCCI luncheon, that there is an initiative now to have young people coding. So these young people that will start coding, and it will be in the curriculum, will be able to use their talents to innovate. But there are a few things that we need to do as a country to ensure that we can facilitate this. We already have excellent telecommunications. There was a study that was done, I think the Koreans came here and did a study and said that we've got some of the best telecommunications in the world. That's fantastic. We need that, right? We also have the skilled human capital, right? We've got the skilled labor force. We have the talent here in Barbados. And that's why a lot of countries are looking at Barbados to lead in this respect. That's why a lot of businesses globally, like Aion, are looking at Barbados for their headquarters, to put their headquarters for their foundations. But we need to have the right structures here that facilitate housing these headquarters. So we need to look at having the right structure for open source technologies within our foundation, because we know that a foundation in tech terms, when we're talking about technology and open source technology, you have the Linux Foundation, the Apache Foundation. Now with blockchain, you have the Ethereum Foundation. That's housed in Switzerland. Why can't it be here in Barbados, right? We just need to have that structure. We're on the same time zone as North America. We've got all of the treaties that can facilitate business. So we just need to have the right structures. But in addition to that, we need to have the right regulatory environment, because we're dealing with very new technologies, and we've all had many discussions on this. We've got Kevin here from the CDB. We've got a representative there from the IDB, Compete Caribbean, and we recognize the need for some type of regulatory reform so that we can have regulatory clarity for these innovations, because we don't want regulation to stifle innovation. So that's another key element. And one of the ways to do this is through a regulatory sandbox, right? And then finally, you've got to look at a coordination between ministries. This can't all be done with the Ministry of Innovation. You need cooperation from the Ministry of Finance. We need to have international business involved, because this technology, it now opens up Barbados globally. So we're looking at doing international business in a very different way, forming partnerships and treaties with other countries to facilitate this, and this will all be done on the blockchain. So that's what we want to see in Barbados. We want to use the Aion platform to really launch Barbados into the next stage of innovation and the next kind of industrial revolution where this technology has taken us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Haggins. Mr. Arm, you care to give a few words?
Good afternoon. I'm Margus from Estonia. And it's a pleasure to be here on the podium next to Howard's and give you a short overview. Really, this is a short overview about the Estonia, what we have done regarding the digital identity and online business. And it might be very difficult for you next 2 hours because you have to understand my Estonian English language. Sorry for that. But first, shortly about Estonia. Who knows where Estonia is locating? Not very much. Okay, let's get on better. Okay, we are a small country in north of the Europe. Our neighbors are Latvia and Russia, and Finland and Sweden over the sea. And we call ourselves a small country. Our population is 1.3 million, but compared with the Barbados, we are a big country. And our territory is 24,000 square kilometers. We are 100 times bigger than you are, but we still call ourselves, we are a small one. And we are a member of the European Union and the NATO. And if you are talking about Estonia, I can bring out like 4 cornerstones on top. Sorry, and this is the first one is unique identifier. All Estonians, they have unique identifier, which is like my name in IT systems, in databases. And this is public information. As I know, all the Barbados citizens, they have also unique identifier. But you keep those in the different databases, and databases are not connected, as I understand. And then we can come to the next cornerstone. And this is data exchange. In Estonia, we have a lot of different databases. We do not have one huge super database, but we have agreed a protocol how we can change the data between the different databases. And it's one common understanding. If you want to get some information from our other authority, that's the protocol you have to implement. All the databases, IT systems, they are different, but the communication is agreed. And the third cornerstone is a strong digital identity issued by the government. It is ID card, mobile ID, DigiID, and now we have also e-residency card. It means that all you who are here, you can apply for the e-residency and start using Estonian e-services. And of course, legal part and trust. There is no strong identity if there are no trust. It's the most important thing. You have to trust your government who is issuing the certificates and digital identity. And of course, if you have your ID card, everything is in place. You want to use it. There must be the software which can communicate with the chip card and that the e-service providers can take and implement with their e-services and start using it. And if we talk a little bit about the numbers, then 99% of the banking transactions are done online in Estonia. There are just a few branch offices where you can go physically and meet the bank teller or something. But they are as consultants. They don't take the payments and don't handle the cash. E-voting. In last voting processes, we have got 33% over the online. I don't have to go to the polling station. I can vote from my home. And 95% of the tax declarations are done also online. It takes 18 minutes to establish the company in Estonia. You just go and register your company and start making the business. It includes opening a banking account. 18 minutes, yes. It's online. You just insert your ID card, go to the web page, fill in all the forms, sign digitally, open the bank account, done. You can start making the business. Okay, and in Estonia we have got questions. Quite often we got the question, how many e-services you have in Estonia? The honest answer is we do not know. Because it's open. Everybody can take the components and implement a e-service. And the ID card authentication, mobile ID authentication, it's like just take and start using. But we think that we have like 5,000 e-services in Estonia. And there are only 3 things that you cannot do online. You can think about that, and in the beginning of the next panel discussions, I show the slide. And digital identity doesn't mean that all the citizens 100% start using online services. In Estonia, it's only 60% of the citizens are using e-services, using the ID card. But we are happy with that, because there are the young people, kids, older people, they don't want to use. But I think that 60% is enough. It's never going to be 100%. And today we are giving more than 100 million digital signatures every year. And the population is 1.3. It's quite a huge number. It's like if you give, if somebody brings me the paper-based agreement in Estonia, I start thinking there might be something wrong. Because you can fake the date on the paper. You can fake the signature on the paper. But in digital world, you cannot fake the date. And in Estonia, most agreements are online, signed digitally, and if there will be a paper-based, we immediately think, okay, there might be something. And that's all about a short introduction at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think now our audience can see why we pushed so hard to get Mr. Arm here so he could explain some of the experiences of Estonia. And I believe it sort of opened our eyes somewhat, especially the 18 minutes. However, I would like to pose a question. We're about to take questions from the audience, but I would like to pose a question in relation to you mentioned trust, and we have to talk about trust in the context of blockchain, trust in the context of providing assurances of users of all the digital services that their data isn't going to be abused, mishandled. And I'm posing this to the entire panel, how can we offer assurances to use, when we start deploying these services, how can we offer assurances to the users of these services that their data is going to be kept safe? And the other question is, to whom does the data belong? Does the data belong to them? Does the data belong to the government? Does the data belong to your company? And I will just throw the question out and ask for feedback.
Well, I have an opinion on that. And first of all, your data is your data. It shouldn't belong to anyone, and there's ways that you can ensure that from an identity perspective all the way down. In the blockchain world, since the topic is around blockchain, one of the best parts about this field is we don't need to trust anyone. I don't need to trust anyone because I have mathematics. How do I ensure my data is my data? I control the private keys in the public key pair encryption system. I control the private keys to an entry on the database that's shared with the entire world, and the entire world gets to see the public side of that entry, but they can never access it. So in terms of managing a health record, a digital ID record, a digital dollar, anything of the above, as long as I'm managing my own private keys, I am my own bank.
May I respond for that comments? But yes, you are talking about the technology, but what we are meaning is that the trust, how you issue those private keys, it must be very clear, it must be documented, and everybody can read the documentation and follow. Yes, the government acts as they write down, and that's the trust. When I got the private keys or my ID card, after that, yes, I have my keys, PIN codes, and everything like that, but the enrollment process, that's the question about the trust.
Well, if you're using a centralized process like a government or a national ID system, you'll always have to assume that there's going to be a trust center. But when looking into the blockchain arena, we assume that there's a decentralized mechanism of trust, and therefore it avoids the centralized model of identity from a government trust center. However, if we are building a national ID system, we do need that recognizable factor in the ID world. But in most other instances, we don't necessarily need that. For example, from a KYC perspective of sharing my basic information with a bank, for example, they only need to see a zero knowledge proof, but I don't need to reveal my actual identity. That's just where I'm going with it.
Okay, I see we have some members of the audience waiting to ask some questions. So please introduce yourself, and then,
I'll be brief. Arla Vera Harper, visual evangelist on the media.rlh. My question goes to the trust side of it. I know we already have what we call verification protocols, by like VeriSign and stuff like that. How can those be actually enforced or strengthened? Because I've seen VeriSign situations where those VeriSign things have failed. And to Estonia, when did you guys really realize the benefits of going that digital route for such a wide gamut of services and identity thing? And to Aion, could you please explain and also Gabriel, the blockchain, because believe it or not, even though it is a hot word, the idea of blockchain still makes people a little kind of weird as to what it actually is.
Okay, so I'll handle the blockchain. You hit the Estonia, and since it's very simply, a blockchain is nothing more than a ledger, a database. And the only fancy part about this database is once an entry is inputted into this database, it can't be destroyed, edited, forged, or removed. So in the case of VeriSign that you brought up, I'm trusting VeriSign and their security mechanisms and their centralized architecture that they did not make a mistake from a security perspective. I'm also trusting them to host and hold my data. In the blockchain arena, I can host and hold my data in a decentralized fashion and ensure that I have control of it. Now, once again, a blockchain is nothing more than a database, just a really crappy database. It's horrible for storage. It's extremely amazing for data integrity, meaning that I can validate the integrity or the pureness of data with a high level of certainty, and the highest level of certainty that it hasn't been tampered with, and I can prove an existence of an event. It becomes a very useful system in every single facet of the world of trust. Where we have to trust somebody to do something, we can now ensure that database has remained true. And that's basically what the blockchain is, and that's why there's so much hype. And the reason behind it is because there's a lot of energy and mathematics ensuring that actors act the way they're meant to without nefarious or malicious intent being applied.
Right, and to add to what Gabriel said there, a key point to this is that there's an economic incentive to securing this network, this database. And that economic incentive is key, because why would anybody want to secure a network for you? And it costs them, as Gabriel said, energy. You're expending energy to secure this network. So there's a compensation. And in the case of, say, Bitcoin, you're compensated with Bitcoin for securing the network. And that process is known as mining in a very simple kind of explanation. It's called proof of work. But there's also other ways to secure blockchain networks. One of them is called proof of stake. So this is where you're storing your coins in a digital wallet. Those are seen on the network, and it's a way of securing that network. So when you look at third-generation blockchains like Aion, we're actually kind of going to have a hybrid proof of work and proof of stake mechanism for consensus and securing that network.
In Estonia, we are using blockchain technology to secure our log files. It means that nobody cannot change them, even the system administrators, even the big bosses. That's the way we protect our data.
Mr. Arm, remember, you were also asked, when was it that Estonia sort of started seeing the benefits from going this digital route? So would you care to respond to that as well?
Maybe I can answer into those questions during the next panel discussion. This is a topic or that. Okay.
Good morning, panelists. Lisa Evanson's strategy. It feels like morning to me. I'm hearing it's afternoon, but I'm bright and chipper this lovely day. So I've got two questions. Long one first. And I'm very glad to have our colleague from Estonia here and also our colleague from CARICOM, because I think we need all this input. So health, finance, law, IT, we all speak different jargon. What specifically do we need to do to create the digital life together? Like, how do we meet in the middle where people are after work, where the digital ID is a combination of all the legal aspects, the financial aspects, the health aspects, where it would come up the most, where we sometimes don't think of it? Also, what's the minimum investment in euro for a Estonian company to be formed? That minimum investment in euro for an Estonian company.
If I could just start addressing the first question about how do we all kind of participate from all these different fields, kind of taking them to the next level in terms of innovation. Right here at the University of the West Indies, there is a blockchain, and it's been running and being tested for quite a while now. And it is securing some data, some medical records, and that's just one area, right? If you look at other areas that we may want to improve efficiency around the whole Caribbean, we could think about things like police certificates of character. Probably everybody in this room at some stage has had to get one. You had to realize how long it takes, how laborious the process is, and then once you get it, it's pretty much useless because you need to get another one very soon after that if you want to do anything else. Now imagine if we had those police certificates of character on the blockchain and you were able to get it when you needed it and it would be updated very rapidly, well then all of a sudden we've got a huge element of efficiency. Now, we love the police force, they're great, they perform a great service, but if you're a business person and you're spending a lot of time trying to get this police certificate of character so that you can get a job or to do whatever it is that you need to do, that's kind of taken away from our productivity. So we need to look around Barbados and the Caribbean, the wider Caribbean in general, and start to look at the areas where we can start applying this technology to improve our lives. And that's why, the goal is that we become innovators, which we already are, but now we really put this to use and we start benefiting our everyday lives.
So my take on it is we need more legislation amendments to start providing regulatory clarity to these companies. Bitt.com, when we started, we were the first blockchain company in the entire Latin America and Caribbean region. Blockchain wasn't even a word anyone knew about. And the fear that we had of being arrested almost every single day because we were touching this thing on the internet that everyone on Wall Street was calling a hack, a Ponzi scheme, a drug scandal, and we had to weather that storm. There's other arenas out there where maybe someone wants to build blockchain for a real estate investment trust system or a medical record, but there's no laws that talk about data privacy or user rights when it comes to the online arena. There's a Computer Misuse Act, but it's extremely outdated. So we need legislation to start providing things like a regulatory sandbox, which we started working on over the last, I believe, how long now, Roland?
Started that
3 years
beginning
ago?
of, I think the end of 2016, beginning of 2016.
And we marched into every single regulators, Patrick, myself, Roland, you name it. We tried and tried. Guys, we need a regulatory sandbox or a bigger legislative department that could roll out laws quicker. One of the two, because innovation is not waiting on you guys. And at this point right now, we need to start looking at that as a matter of urgency in governance. That's A. B, the entrepreneurial mindset. It just doesn't exist. We all want to be great employees. Get out of here. I'm sorry, but if I'm going to be honest with this crowd, stop trying to be great employees. Be great entrepreneurs. I did it, and I was extremely successful with it, and I've seen many others marching down that road. that have been inspired by what we have done. And I think that everyone in this room, everyone beyond here, has the potential. Barbados has an extremely amazing workforce, and it's our biggest export is our brains. And right now, we have a potential of saying, hey, we have this small developing island state. What can we do here on this island using our small size and our ability to turn quickly, but with our intellectual prowess? And we can really do amazing things. And that's a key component of people need to understand that. And also stop believing that because you don't have the money, you can't get it done. I didn't have 2 cents to rub between my fingers when we were building up Bitt. I remember Light and Power gave us a red notice. Anyone ever got a red notice? Light and Power gave us a red notice. And we faced that for several months. Okay? And we just kept fighting it. And eventually, when you have the passion, the drive, the belief, you have an army of people behind you, somebody's going to see that and they're going to say, man, I have an extra $10 in my pocket, I'll back that company. And it happened to us twice. And we became 2 use cases in the Caribbean. The first one where we did the largest ever seed round, and then again, the largest ever Series A. And in a few months, we're going to do the largest ever Series B. Because at the end of the day, we believe in what we're building, and that's what Barbadians need to get across, and other people in the region, that they can deliver something that has global magnitude and global impact. And then the final part of it is, we need to understand that if we want real sovereignty and real independence, we really need to fight the things that are really holding us back in society. And those go along the lines of the banking system and things that do not allow us to have, as entrepreneurs, access to the capital. I remember we tried to apply for a $50,000 loan for Bitt, and we were rejected. We went on to raise a tranche of $16 million. How many other Barbadians do you think out here faced that and did not become successful? I'm willing to bet quite a few. So all in all, I think that what's missing right now is our own spirits need to come alive and realize that we can be the best. Our government needs to realize that they need to provide clarity for us or a sandbox for us to play in so that we can build next generational tools, and that we need a system that allows us to have a level of independence that we can survive.
Yeah. And just to add to that, because we're using terms that I'm not sure if everybody is quite aware when we refer to the sandbox. We're talking about a regulatory environment that doesn't stifle innovation, but allows it to flourish. And this is key because a lot of the technologies that we're using right now and that we're seeing around the world, they don't fit into any kind of existing legislation or legal framework. So when you have a situation like that, you can leave that innovation in a gray area. And you can just say, well, we'll just wait and see. And that's what previously happened with Bitt, for example. There was nobody regulating Bitt. There was no clarity. It fallen in an undefined area. But a sandbox allows a regulator to observe the business, to understand it. There's a knowledge-sharing component. And then produce a set of guidelines and rules for that company to follow in the absence of any legislation or existing legal framework. And that's important because it means that these businesses will be regulated. They're not rogue businesses just operating outside of the scope of a regulator. That means you're protecting consumers, which is very important. And that's why Patrick and myself took a lot of time to kind of build that framework for a regulatory sandbox. And then we brought in other stakeholders to add to that. So you have Chancery Chambers, you have Clark Giddens and Farmer, you have like Lex Caribbean, you've got the major law firms in Barbados sitting down, DGM Financial Group, sitting down and looking at how we can bring business to Barbados. And all we need is that regulatory environment that is conducive to allowing innovation to flourish. And once we do that, we'll open the floodgates and we will have all of the major technology companies coming to Barbados, setting up. It'll be competition for us, but you know what? We welcome it because it's good for the country. And that's what we want to see.
And here's why it's really good for the country. Just really quickly, one of the companies that came from abroad, like Aion, just recently paid a tax bill of their 2017 tax bill, and the government earned $500,000 from one international company establishing on our shores. Just put that in perspective for a second.
Okay, Mr. Ho, did you have an intervention?
It's complementary. It's complementary, colleagues. I think in the region we are a little too late We usually catch the bus late, or some folks are saying in Trinidad we're bandwagoners, yeah? Notwithstanding, I think there are some bright sparks in the region. This is correlated to a large extent to our existing business environment, so these things aren't disconnected, colleagues. If you look at our doing business ranking, Jamaica is leading around 69 or 70 there, about 2017, 2018 doing business report. And you find a lot of what's inhibiting us, you could find that insight there. Let me offer some comparison. So Estonia has a very interesting story in terms of where they are, but it was as a response to a challenge that they were facing. We have now, 2 days ago, we have Malta promoting itself as the future blockchain island on CNN Money. And this was as a result of being among one of the first European countries to put in place the legislation to provide legal certainty around where they want to go in terms of adopting blockchain. Similarly, we have Mauritius in the Asia-Pacific area, in the African and Indian Ocean, that's also using its geographic location to become a blockchain hub. They're doing well on their doing business environment. Equally important, there's leadership. They do have a regulatory sandbox, and the regulatory sandbox idea is really about partnerships. It's about bringing all the key players in the room, right, with a commitment to solve the problem that we're facing. There would be consensus, there would be iterating until they arrive at some solution. So even the issues surrounding trust is solved in that pilot phase. So not only would we get the right type of regulatory environment as an outcome, but we would ensure we at least we sift through some of those products that would give confidence to the public.
Okay, thank you. I believe we now have a question that was posed online and 2 questions in the room. 3 questions in the room. And so can we please have them quickly? Thank you.
Hello, this question's coming from online, from Larry Mears. Is legislation required to provide remote teleworker services outside of the region and receive payment through cryptocurrencies? And the other question is, from Larry Mears, how does blockchain exist in a world riddled with GDPR fears? Is this even an issue?
That was mine too. Yeah.
Oh, it's you.
Okay. Could you repeat the second question, please?
How does blockchain exist in a world riddled with GDPR fears? Is this even an issue?
Okay, so that actually poses a very interesting question. If information about you is written to the blockchain and it's immutable, and GDPR introduces the right to have that information about you removed, where does that leave us?
Too bad. Ultimately, we have to look at things like the Barbados Streisand effect. When something hits the internet, assume it's there forever. And that's just a general way information and knowledge works in the digital age. Blockchain provides an immutable ledger, and if something is written to this ledger, shy of spending billions of dollars and having a lot of energy to destroy this network, trillions of dollars at this point possibly, it's going to be there forever. And you don't need, with regards to the payment online, receiving payments for services applied, no, there's no need for legislation. However, seek tax advice on how to make sure you settle up with the government.
Yeah, and just to add to that, you're dealing with public key cryptography, where you have a public key and a private key. And although the information may be there, accessing it is a different story, especially if you no longer have access to that private key. So yes, it will be stored there, but whether anybody can access it or not,
well, I think they're talking about where like Luke Dash Jr. put verses of the Bible on the blockchain, and you could actually find it with plain public searches. I think they're referring to that kind of stuff. Once again, remember, this isn't like a website being launched against someone and they're asking Google to forget the search terms against it. This is a really crappy database that has hieroglyphics stored inside of it that don't make sense to anyone that doesn't have the private key per se. There's a limited amount of information you can add there. So if you're going to tweet a really bad thing about me and store it in the blockchain forever, okay.
Mr. Arm?
In Estonia, we don't put like personal data to the blockchain. If we put blockchain something, it's already encrypted. And that's, you can decrypt and see the hash is the same or not.
Okay, and we had one final question from the audience.
Okay, my first thing, good afternoon. My name is Mohammed Charles, graduate of the University of West Indies, Spanish with linguistics. I just have one quick question, well, two quick questions. How does blockchain protect digital currency? And what do you mean by digital currency? Cryptocurrencies?
So blockchain in and of itself is the underlying facet in the modern thing that we call digital currency. There's other forms of digital currencies that we've known in the past, like e-private money systems, gaming systems, airline reward systems. Those are forms of virtual and digital currencies. So I think you're mistaking the channels here. But on a blockchain, what makes it secure is the fact that there's an applied energy and computation to make this chain secure. That incentive is driven by a digital currency system like something like Bitcoin. In our case, I think what you're trying to get to is, how do we make the Barbados digital dollar safe with the blockchain? What we do is we use the overlay protocol of Bitcoin. So within Bitcoin or other types of blockchains, you can store data, as we've been talking about the whole day. I want to store a representation of a central bank dollar. I would use the blockchain and that protocol to store it. And I would know that it would be very, 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 very hard or computationally impossible for anyone to destroy that record. And therefore, I knew that a double spend couldn't occur. So blockchain is used to protect systems and applications. And it also does have an underlying or above-lying component considered to be a digital currency.
Yeah. And just
So to be concise as possible, why should I, as a young man, invest in digital currency?
So why should you invest in Bitcoin is what you're asking? Because if you're going to invest in digital currencies, you can go and buy Barbados dollar and you might as well have the physical cash. It's not really an investment. And I wouldn't advise you to invest in inflationary-based systems. Why would you want to buy something like Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency? Because there's only 21 million units. It has a lot of utility around the world. People like jurisdictions like Estonia are using systems like Bitcoin to secure the integrity of their hashes. People are using it for wealth transfer. And ultimately, it's an extremely useful commodity. And therefore, it's a great investment, in my personal and humble opinion. But I'm not an investment advisor. So you can potentially lose all your money investing in something like that.
Yeah, just to add to that, we're calling these things cryptocurrencies. Somebody came up with that. It's a cryptographically secured token or coin or whatever you want to call it, for lack of a better word. But really and truly, as Gabriel said a few times, it's a database. Now, in order to secure that database, it does have an economic element, which is a coin, which we're calling a coin, which is just code. And the people that secure this network get compensated in that, but it's also being traded, right? So if you're going to talk about investing, well, then you need to understand about investing and the dangers of investing and the risks of trading and so forth. But the real debate right now is what actually are these blockchain-based things that we're seeing and people are calling cryptocurrencies. In some cases, yes, they may function as currencies, but we haven't actually seen them issued by central banks yet. That's something that Bitt's working on, developing the front end for that, and the back end will be an actual blockchain, right? And then you've got the situation where, in some cases, we're looking at actually issuing securities on the blockchain, and now you're talking about a securitized token. It's using the same technology as what is used for what people are calling cryptocurrencies, but now you're actually talking about potentially equity that's going to be trading and settling pretty much instantly on the blockchain. So is that a currency? Well, it has characteristics like a currency, but it's actually an equity. It's actually a security. So that's a debate that's going on. Well, what do we call these things? And that's why, remember we spoke about the sandbox. It's key that you look at each of these individually, and currently there's well over 1,000 different cryptocurrencies out there. But that's important to look at them individually and to ascertain and determine exactly what they are.
Okay, we have approximately 1 minute left. So I'm going to give each panelist 15 seconds to leave with us one point that you would wish the audience to take away, if it's just one thing. Begin.
Say I'll go first. Okay, so the bank is committed to work with government, private sector, institution development agencies. Our interest is about threefold. One, we are interested in supporting the knowledge exchange. So in terms of identifying the talent and also bringing the talent in so we could empower our people, because we recognize there's a need for more knowledge. Secondly, we believe that there must be ecosystems, so legislative, business sector reform, all those things are important. And finally, we can't forget the importance of networks or partnerships. So we have talented people within Barbados and the wider Caribbean, so we got to be confident enough to reach across the border to our counterparts in Asia, Africa, and elsewhere, and accelerate our learning.
Absolutely. Fantastic, Kevin. And just to add to that, we have our own blockchain right here in Barbados. We've got blockchain developers working on it. We would like to see people start to innovate on this blockchain from Barbados. We'd like to see you learn as much as you can about blockchain, start developing applications. And we're going to have the right environment here in Barbados. The government is making sure of that, to ensure that your innovation is not stifled and that Barbadians will become innovators and continue to become innovators, and we will all benefit from that innovation.
Mr.
Shortly, I have to say, it's maybe sad to say, but blockchain is just another technology. And the question about, if you are talking about the digital identity, it's not the question about the technology. It's the question about the implementation, processes, trust, and trainings, and so on. Technology, we are using in Estonia, very old technology. So the question is how you implement it. Thank you.
Well, I really can't top that. But what I would advise everyone in here, and it's the key fundamental to learning, go and educate yourselves on the subject. Don't listen to some guys on a panel speak for under an hour about how revolutionary this currency or system or protocol or cryptographic solution is going to be. Reddit.com/r/Bitcoin, Reddit.com/r/cryptocurrency, BitcoinTalk.org. Understand there's 1,001, a million different blockchain-based technologies. Understand what makes Bitcoin the king, makes Ethereum cool for innovation. Understand why people are actually taking their money and buying this magic internet money thing. Get why some of the world's brightest minds are behind it. So education. And the second thing I'd leave with the people in the room is everyone in here should at least try to buy $100 worth of Bitcoin and do so on a monthly basis every single month. And I don't think I'm putting you guys wrong. I'm just not an investment advisor, but it helps you understand the technology. It's a deflationary asset. It's extremely cool, and it would give you access to the world of other types. It becomes the gateway for the digital age of the other types of blockchains coming out. Ultimately, if you wanted to buy some Aion right now, you're going to want to have Bitcoin.
And with that, I would like to thank my panelists for what was hopefully a very engaging discussion. And thank you all very much.